So, folks, we have to talk about Zohran Mamdani, right? Because one of the things that one of the things you have to understand is that he's been on the clock. Okay, that clock's been ticking, right? And he has to accomplish enough with the time he has in power right after he got in office to justify his political uniqueness, right, on the national scale. Because New York City, it's national and to a degree international even. And living up to a lot of his promises is deeply, deeply important, not just to New York City, not just to, you know, the localized politics of socialism in New York, but also on the national level. His success is what is going to essentially prove socialist values can succeed on a large scale. Right? If he can make it happen there, it can happen anywhere. And that is deeply, deeply, deeply important, especially to our current political moment where fascism is on the rise and we are seeing truly terrifying events happen on a near daily basis. And establishment Democrats have effectively just ceded untold amounts of power to this fascist administration out of expediency, out of a desire to avoid the ire of the fascists. But it is important for him to succeed because he will be succeeding in spite of a large scale of resistance. And basically the only thing he had going for him was the people's mandate coming out of that election against Andrew Cuomo. Right? It's a limited window before establishment Dems in New York start telling him no and closing the door in his face, effectively blocking him from the levers of power. Well, we have an update on his efforts.
New York, it's executive budget season, and I'm proud to announce that our city's budget is fully balanced. This budget isn't just about numbers on a page. It determines if our libraries get funded, if a street is safe to cross, if snow is actually shoveled after a storm. And you deserve to know exactly how we got here. We inherited a $12 billion budget deficit.
We are speaking about a fiscal crisis at the scale greater than the Great Recession.
Was the Great Recession? Great Recession. Many said the only way out of this was slashing services and passing an austerity budget. We rejected that. After months of painstaking work, that deficit is now zero. Our city is now on firm financial ground. We achieved this in two major ways: increasing revenue and support from Albany, and cutting waste and finding savings here in New York City.
So, balancing the budget is incredibly, incredibly important for what he is doing, specifically because the conventional wisdom is that fiscal conservative policy is what balances budgets. Him coming in as a socialist, not implementing an austerity budget, and managing to balance it despite inheriting a massive amount of debt from the previous administration, that is a huge, huge, huge victory, right? This is actually something that moves the needle in terms of what normies, people who are not heavily glued into the political, milieu, what they actually believe and think is possible in politics, right? This is something that meaningfully shifts the Overton window.
Thanks to Governor Hochul, State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, and months of organizing from New Yorkers, we tax the rich.
I also want to point out here, he's doing a number of things incredibly well, which, of course, I don't have to tell you that he is communicating very well here, but obviously he's communicating very well. Because a lot of politicians fail at actually getting their message out. Like, when was the last time you heard your local mayor tell you clearly and concisely what they did, what they had been working on, what they'd accomplished? And he's doing this in a way that everyone in this country can learn about. He is going out in front of average, everyday, normal people and saying clearly what was accomplished and why it is a big deal, what this budget allows them to do. and relating it to the things normal people actually give a damn about. Oh, it gets snow off the streets, it keeps libraries open, it keeps buses going. That all sounds really good. We like all those things and rely on those things. On top of that, he then calls out by name the people who worked with him, right? And that is an incredibly valuable piece of political capital, largely because if they are people who are in the liberal establishment, right, it allows them to look really good. They have now associated themselves with someone who is incredibly popular, incredibly well-liked, and is now being perceived as very competent. And being associated with someone like that is valuable in politics, right? So he is giving the people he is listing by name a gift, right? And that is something that they will remember. It helps build and maintain those political ties, right? And then he talks about actually getting taxes passed on the wealthy. Let's hear him out here.
Tax alone will raise $500 million per year. And that's not all. Thanks to Governor Hochul and our partners in Albany, we finally got a better deal for New York City. We're getting billions more from the state to help tackle the gap. At the same time, we've been poring over the city budget to identify savings. We reduced unnecessary overtime and found smarter ways for government to deliver services. This all added up to $1.77 billion in total savings. Our budget isn't just about closing deficits. It's about building a city New Yorkers can actually afford. On day 8 of our administration, we announced a historic partnership with Governor Hochul to finally deliver universal childcare. That's $1.2 billion in new funding from Albany. And this was just the beginning. Investments in citywide trash containerization, cheaper groceries, safer streets, relief for taxi drivers are all on the way. And we're increasing funding for libraries, parks, and cultural institutions. I promise to make sure you were part of this budget process every step of the way. This is your city. These are your tax dollars. And this budget should reflect your priorities.
I also want to point out here that, there is an element here of people continuing to organize. Because, of course, the work is never done, right? You never finish organizing. Because there's always work to be done, always people to pressure, always policies to pass and make better. And so, in New York City, for example, there was a lot of contention around funding for public libraries. And it led to a lot of protests. It led to a lot of different moves and shakes. And then it turns out, wow, look at that. Mayor Mamdani restores library funding after public outcry. Let's see. Mamdani will add an additional $31.7 million in funding to the 3 library system, Queens, Brooklyn, and New York, as requested by the city council. Library funding accounts for less than $500 million, or less than 0.5% of the city's overall $124.5 billion budget. The mayor's initial proposal in February to slash library funding amid a $5.4 billion budget deficit surprised many of his supporters. During the campaign, Mamdani praised the libraries as important city resources and cultural hubs. If they're just going to say, oh, I love the library, but you're not actually supporting them, then that's a real disappointment and frankly, bullshit, said Abby Emerson, a member of the New York City Public Library Action Network, or NYC Plan, when the cuts were announced. In response to the criticism, the mayor's office stressed that the proposed cuts were part of a preliminary budget that would be revised at later stages of the budget negotiation process. But library supporters wasted no time in mobilizing against the cuts, right? So what I want to point out here is that there is a multifaceted game being played in New York City right now, which relies on folks like New York City Plan showing up and protesting, because a lot of the people who control the purse strings, right? Folks on the city council, etc., they are the ones who need to receive pressure in order to agree to fund libraries, right? And so what is happening here is that for example, in this particular situation, you have Zohran Mamdani's campaign and office releasing this preliminary budget that they know is going to get people upset, know is going to rile them up, but they also know that those people are organized. And so when that budget gets released and the office then says, oh, it's a preliminary budget we're going to be negotiating on later, these groups mobilize and put the pressure on to anyone who might not be in favor of funding the library, right? And that works to shake money out of liberal holdouts who don't want to fully fund the library system because it's easy for them to cut in order to throw more money at like police overtime or something, right? It is quite interesting, to say the least. On top of that, billionaires are noting that Zohran is a threat. Oh, sorry, we also need to just finish like the last couple seconds of this.
We're proud to put forward a budget for the working people of this city. And we're going to do it again next year. And next year. And next year. And next year.
He's very cute. I like him. And I want to point out here that he's talking about balancing the budget next year and next year and next year and next year, right? Which is really important because part of what is happening in New York City is Zohran Mamdani going toe-to-toe with the wealthiest people in the city. You know, there was a huge outcry and a pushback on taxing secondary residents that are worth over $5 million in the city, right? And it got them over $500 million from the wealthiest people to exist in this country, right? And it also has publications like Politico doing hit pieces. And it's just kind of interesting, right? Trump defends Mamdani as a nice guy, but warns the rich aren't very pleased. Like, this guy is so well-liked that even Donald Trump just wants to be positively associated with him. Even though he knows that the rich and powerful do not like Zohran Mamdani. Like, he said this, by the way, after this. The tax policies are so wrong. People are fleeing. This stuff just doesn't work. They are trying to characterize all of this as a gigantic failure over and over and over again. And he just keeps winning. And it's deeply frustrating to the powers that be, right? Also, just want to point out, here is a video of a lady who is part of Bend the Arc Jewish Action. Right? Let's just take a quick look here. What did she have to say?
800%! 800%!
800%? That's a lot of percents. What was that for? It's because Zohran Mamdani in this new budget that he passed increased funding to investigate hate crimes and also prevent hate crimes by 800% of what its previous budget was. Let's go. Like, he is keeping his promises. He is making this shit happen. And it is incredibly gratifying to see. Incredibly gratifying. And all of this to say, Zohran Mamdani has managed a spectacular, campaign, but like, we're so far beyond campaign. He's managed a spectacular period of governance for New York City, right? Wait, is that woman happy about the funding or mad? She's happy. She's part of the Bend the Arc Jewish Action Coalition, specifically very happy about the investment in the city's anti-hate crime division, as it, like, Jewish people are one of the number one hate crime groups in New York City. So, all that being said here, we have a brewing rumble on the horizon. And Zohran Mamdani needs to keep making these savvy moves, right? Because part of him coming into office, and we've talked about this at length, is the window of opportunity he has available to him, right? Because if you are someone who comes in with all targets drawn on your back, you have a limited amount of time when you are the only real political capital you have is that people like you and voted you in, right? And usually what happens with an elected politician is that they come in at the peak of their popularity and then it starts going down as decisions have to be made, right? Zohran Mamdani is through sheer talent, is actually reversing that trend and has slowly become more popular as he's done more and more, right? What this means is his window of opportunity has gotten bigger. And so what is happening with this budget, and people online are very big mad about this budget for a couple of different reasons, right? But one of the big things to understand about the balancing of this budget is that it came as a result of one-time cash infusions from the state, right? When he talks about getting more money for New York City from the state, that's what he's talking about. But these are not influxes of cash that are going to continue beyond this year. So what does that mean? It means that after having established a year of solid governance where the books are balanced, where he's clearly communicating, where he's building up friendships and alliances within the state and city levels, it turns out like there's another fight on the horizon against specifically the wealthiest people in New York City. Because in order to balance the books next year, they are going to have to pass more substantial taxes on the wealthiest residents of New York City. And so that fight is brewing, but he has succeeded to fight again another day with this particular budget. So this budget, huge achievement, has extended his window of opportunity. And we will see if he is able to marshal enough political capital in order to get new taxes on the rich passed in order to keep this city budget balanced. And I gotta be honest, I would be a bit doubtful if it was anybody else, if it was any other team pushing this, but they have proven to be truly talented trailblazers. And I am really excited to see, and this sounds weird and maybe the most nerdy thing anyone has ever said, but I'm really excited to see how they balance New York City's budget next year. I'm really excited to see how they do it because it could be one of the most progressive taxation schemes in U.S. history, and I'm excited. I'm excited for a place in this country to start living up to its potential. So it's very, very cool. Nerd. I know. Hi, I'm new here and mostly lurk, but as a Canadian, how can a city mayor tax the rich? It isn't possible in our tax system in Canada, at least where I am in Ontario. Well, the city can tax different locations, can pass taxes that are tailored to affect the wealthiest people within the city. Property taxes being one that can go to the city. This is the source of how Zohran Mamdani was able to pass like a tax on the secondary residences, stuff like that. And on top of that, New York City is so incredibly influential and large within New York state politics that there is a certain amount of collaboration and cooperation that takes place between the leadership in New York City and the elected leadership in New York's assembly, right? So that's it's kind of a both working together to pool that political capital and make that happen. So that is like a deeply simplified version of what happens, of course. Nah, city can 100% tax the wealthy. Doug Ford would have a big old poo, though. Yeah, I don't know anything about Canadian law as relates to taxation. Anyway, folks, I just thought this was all great news. I wanted to share it with you. And we should all be ready to watch Zohran Mamdani have to truly kick it into high gear, unlock his next form. Maybe he'll go Super Saiyan 2 in next year when it comes to balancing the budget. Who knows? But all that being said, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments longer than 8 words really help in the algorithm. Also, do consider getting organized. Organize with your local Dems. Make them more progressive. Organize with your local DSA. Make them more effective. We could be running right now. Somebody online commented oh, can we clone Zohran Mamdani? And the good news is you can, sort of. Not with a clone machine, but you can by adopting his policies, learning from his example, and becoming the Zohran Mamdani of your city or town. Like, or alternatively, going out there and building up the infrastructure that allows someone like a Zohran Mamdani to succeed, right? Like, what we are called to do is not to just clone Mamdani. What we are called to do is to raise up an army of people who share that dream of a better America, right? But we need the charisma. You do need the charisma, but also you need the good policy. You need the apparatus that can allow you to win local elections. And if you're not someone with the charisma to run, not everyone is, you can be part of the solution building up the framework that makes it possible for someone with that shared vision, with that shared dream to succeed. Okay? Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in any campaign. So, all of that being said, folks, we can help you get involved. Join our Discord, reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems, reach out to Gamergy for help joining your local DSA. We want to help you take those first steps if you haven't yet, because we know it can be pretty scary, but we're here to demystify it for you a little bit and help you take those first steps, which can be the hardest ones to take. So, all that being said, last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes. Also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfy, it is cozy, it is sexy as hell, and it is non-tucking lingerie. Go check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the doobly-doo. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.